Good morning, colleagues. My name is Adrian Rogers. I'm the CEO of Chiltern Learning Trust, and also I lead the teaching school, help lead the teaching school, Chiltern Teaching School Alliance. I'm absolutely delighted and proud that we've been able to put together for you today lots of leadership ideas and quality input. Over the next term or so, Sufian, our Director of Teaching School, has rounded up the very, very best of education minds across the country and put them out there for you. At this point, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to them. They're very busy people and they've done all of this for free. Sufian has been a sort of cross between Bob Geldof, for those of you old enough to understand, and also a Del Boy, again an ageist reference, but Sufian has gone out, he's pestered people, and they've actually given willingly of their time, absolutely free, to put on leadership courses for you over the next term, every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, to help you develop. And that'll really help the profession. These are dark times and they're difficult times, but actually I think it's important that we use our brain power, that we don't go stir crazy and sit in our house doing nothing. So hopefully these sessions are about exercising your brain, getting yourself going forward, and actually thinking about your career and the contributions that you can make to education in school. Okay, so what have we got? We have about 50 sessions now, and Sufian will give some detail, and they are all based around leadership practice, very different angles, from finance through to pedagogy, through to HR, etc. And we've put all of those together in hopefully a fairly coherent program. And this is about you. This is about developing you. And we'd really like to say again, say a huge thank you. Some of those people are my education heroes, and I can't wait to listen to them and have them beamed into my office. So I've been doing my role for 5 years. Our trust has 11 schools. Several are doing really well and are outstanding. We're delighted with that. And prior to that, I was a head teacher for 14 years, and I've been an NLE for 10 years. So Sufian and I have come up with this idea, and Sufian's done all the hard work, but what we hope is that you can learn from experience from people. We have a very mixed audience today, so we have people from trainees through to NQTs through to CEOs listening. So thank you all for joining us. Just some rules of engagement really going through. If you have questions, please use Zoom, type in, we'll try and answer them. This isn't a live broadcast. We have so many people, we just didn't want the technology to fail us, so to speak. So we'll go through your questions as we go through. Also, on the email you've got, you'll have a Twitter at Chiltern TSA or even at Chiltern LT. And on those, please send in your great ideas, send in your questions, send in your thoughts. We've tried to focus in a similar way to SLT chat on 4 key questions. Sufian, Julian and myself, who will be leading the sessions today, will stay online until 11 o'clock and answer everything hopefully on your Twitter. Sam, who's our marketing and communications person, Sam's fresh out of university last year. Sam will be retweeting all the great ideas, and then Julian, Sufian and I will go through and answer some of those things. Just really about the content and the sessions. We are not the sage on the stage here. This is about sharing and bringing people together to think about best practice and to share that and create that forum for leadership development. Many of the things that will come out of today will not come out of the presenter's mouth. They'll be coming through the questions and the ideas. So please, 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 the spirit of this is that you share great ideas. If you're doing something in Derby, in Blackburn, in Scotland, in Wales that we don't know about, please share it today. Please put it out there. We're not saying we're the experts on everything that's going on, and especially in this brave new world. So we hope to promote discussion, we hope to promote debate, we hope to bring ideas together. As I've mentioned 3 names. Julian is our Director of School Improvement, and he will be on shortly. Sam is our marketing. You won't see or hear from Sam, but he'll be behind the Twitter for the first hour, and then Sufian and I will take over from that afterwards. And the next person on is the person that we need to thank for getting all these brilliant people together, and that's Sufian Sadiq. Sufian is a Director of Teaching School and has worked with us for 2 years now. He's got great leadership strengths himself, but today he's going to talk to you through the programme and everything that you wish to know, and perhaps who you want on and you want Sufian to pigeonhole and get on here. Okay, so enjoy the session. Over to you, Sufian.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in this morning. We're incredibly pleased that you could join us on this session, one of many that has been planned for you for your development. I want you to take a few minutes of your time. My name is Sufian Sadiq, and I am the Director of Chiltern Teaching School Alliance. I wanted to tell you about why we have put these sessions on. You would have heard from Adrian, and you will hear from Julian and Adrian again, experts in their field, a CEO with a wealth of experience and outstanding schools within and also an outstanding ex-head teacher with, again, a wealth of experience in working with some of the best teachers in a very strong school. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time because they're the people that you really need to listen to and engage with as a part of this CPD. But CPD is incredibly important, and that's why we've been thinking about putting something on for you so that you can invest time in yourself. We know the challenges of COVID-19 on our young people. We know the challenges of school closures, and we know that each and every one of you is working tirelessly at home at the moment, trying to manage the home life and trying to manage remote working and virtual teaching for your students. But what we need to remember is that you need to give yourself some time. As a head of a teaching school, I'm often inundated with requests for training, but more so than ever before in the last few weeks, we've had people coming forward saying, what about my development? What will I do during this period of time? And it was for us to put on a selection of sessions for you that will meet your needs. And actually, we've been incredibly fortunate. I can't emphasize how appreciative I am of the variety of speakers that have come forward, the wealth of knowledge and expertise that we have, some of the leading names, and I won't even try and name some of them because I'll just miss out so many other brilliant speakers. But you've seen our tweets. If you haven't, it's at Chiltern TSA. Please do follow us. You'll see the tweets. You'll see the lineup of speakers that we have. You can go onto our Eventbrite and you will see it is simply the best CPD lineup in Britain. And that's incredible. That's not down to us, but it's down to you. It's down to the fact that at the moment we released our CPD sessions, relatively small, a selection of sessions, over 7,000 people booked in a matter of hours. That's because people want to develop themselves in this time. So we've made a huge commitment to ensure that we put on the best and a wider variety of sessions. I've heard what you've told me, I've listened to your feedback, and I've ensured that I've got a selection of sessions that will meet your needs, hopefully. But what I want from this is I want you to engage with all of our sessions. I want you to come back to me and my team and tell us what else we can put on for you. I want you to tell us what we can do better. We, like everybody else, we are in uncharted territory, and this is the first time for us to be working online in the way we are. So we will make mistakes, no doubt, but we will learn. We want you to come on that journey with us. Give us the feedback. Tell us how we can improve. Tell us if there's a session that's missing. Tell us if there's a speaker that you want us to approach. Everyone that's contributed so far has done it out of their goodwill. So I can't promise everyone that we will have every speaker, but what I can promise you is that we will try to get you the best selection of speakers in the country, and we will try and get you the best CPD possible put on for you. But what this needs from you is giving yourself that dedicated time where you do switch off. Give yourself that time to focus on your own development so that you can use this time and our CPD sessions, which hopefully will cover almost every day of the academic year that's remaining, to develop yourself and invest in yourself. Give yourself that time to improve yourself. You're going to hear from two brilliant leaders today, and later this week you'll hear from another CEO. Take that time to learn from them. If you have friends and colleagues within your schools that do not know about this program, please share the program, but do engage with us on Twitter at Chiltern TSA. I look forward to hearing from you, meeting many of you, hopefully albeit virtually, over the coming weeks. Thank you for your support, and we hope that you make the most of this great opportunity.
And now we move on to question 2. How do you make the most of your time away and developing yourself? I think it's important that we look for the right things online and in your reading. Lots of things, fortunately, are going out there by very, very many generous people, generous professionals. I think it's important that we look at the right things that are going to guide us online and in reading. I think online there are 2 or 3 really good things that I'd recommend. Definitely, the SLT chat on a Sunday evening is a common one and well known to people, but that's good on a Sunday night for getting your brain working at 8 o'clock. The research ed stuff that's about to come out this week, that also, I would expect to be very high quality. But also, it's great to catch up on your reading and things that you always wanted to look at. Lucy Crehan's book, Cleverlands, I've never got around to reading. Ordered it last week. A super read. Steve Mumby's book, Imperfect Leadership, absolutely wonderful read again. So please have a look at your reading. Don't just limit it to online. You can develop by looking for those books that you've always wanted to read. Also, when you're looking at things moving forward for your leadership development, I think it's important that you take stock of your strengths and your weaknesses as a leader. Within our trust across our 11 schools, we will carry out 360s on heads or senior staff if they wish, and we'll use those for diagnostic purposes and looking at their strengths and areas for development. I'll come on to that in a moment about coaching, but I think that's really important. What we've tried to do on this leadership course is some of them may not seem the most attractive, but they're highly pragmatic. I would imagine, at a guess of the last 2 or 3 years of the people that I've coached or helped and supported, the majority have said that finance is their weakness. So we've been pleased that Teresa and a couple of the finance team have really put on some quality sessions for you later on in the term. But also, looking at your strengths as well, I think that's really important, and looking for things that you can develop yourself on. I think also that you can look at teaching things. These sessions that Sufian and the Teaching School Hub put on are very much about leadership. But there are many, many teaching things that are out there. Many individual trusts and local authorities have pulled together or done them on their own and put together some great online teaching packages. And we're not dismissing those, and of course we're delighted to have the new Oak Academy. But these sessions really are about you developing yourself and developing your leadership. Now, I think a bit of old man's advice would also be that think about where you want to be in 3 to 5 years' time. The biggest cause of discontent that I find with people are actually not knowing where they're going. These sessions aren't designed that suddenly we have lots of people ready to apply for headship or CEO jobs or assistant headships by September. These sessions are to keep you active, keep your brain active, and to keep you thinking along your career plan rather than everything being put on pause and on hold. So I really would urge you to think about not being restless, not being uncertain. Sit down, take time to reflect on where you want to be in 3 years, 5 years. It may be in the same position, but with an improved skill set, and that's fine. I think, like I say, it's uncertainty that causes the most restlessness in staff, and then that's when they flit and apply for jobs that they're not suited for, or start looking in the old days in the TES, but nowadays online, of course. So reduce that uncertainty, have a career path and have a career plan, and that's something that Julian will talk about as well. Also, I think that the next bit, and we touched on just about 360 analysis, I think the next thing to really consider is just picking up the phone to one of your senior leaders or one of your peers. Can someone coach you over the next three months? If performance management looks very different, can you ask someone to coach you in a very positive way? Julian's got some really good provocations in a moment, but I would urge you to consider that. To have some time with someone you can trust, that you can FaceTime, that you can talk to about your career plan, and when you put those ideas together, actually you have someone alongside you working with you. I think if someone's asking me, I'd be really welcome to help people in this time. It is important that we keep busy. So I think that's a really good suggestion. I'm now going to hand over to Julian. Julian is our Director of School Improvement at Chiltern Learning Trust. He's also a very wise man. He's been a head teacher of an outstanding school and worked in schools for many years. He does an absolutely super job across our trust, working with heads and helping and supporting them and bouncing ideas across them. And today he's got some interesting provocations for you. Okay, I'll pass on over to Julian for question 3.
Hello. So we're currently on the third of these prompt questions. Looking forward, developing yourself and others within the current situation. And of course, a lot's been said about how unprecedented it is. A lot of school leaders will be very much feeling as though they are in the eye of the storm. And like many people, I've been mulling over a few of the challenges which the current situation is going to bring to all of us, and yet trying not to view it all just as a challenge, trying to view it also as ways in which we can just keep the momentum going, which is so difficult when situations and circumstances are as they are at the moment. I've tried to put myself into the position of perhaps if I was still ahead, what would I be doing in terms of my own thinking of what happens in the lead up to coming back to normality and what that might look like. And what that means in terms of how a school leader and leaders at all levels are going to develop themselves and others as they go into that period of time. One thing I've got to say is that I've been really encouraged, as I hope so many people have, by the whole collaboration thing going into overdrive. Never before, I think it would be fair to say, has there been so many opportunities or so much willingness to collaborate about so much of what the situations are that schools face at the moment, with the general recognition that those people who might normally be considered to be the experts on so much of what we do are no longer necessarily the experts, and the areas of expertise that we might traditionally look at, those are being left to the IT experts, the e-learning experts, and so therefore not only are school leaders in the position of maintaining the momentum, developing people as we go through these times, but also not always being completely in the driving seat. And I think there's got to be a recognition around that. And that may well change the way so many people do things. Obviously, there's been a lot of communication around day-to-day matters, the nitty-gritty of e-learning, the upskilling of staff, pupils, and how we maintain that momentum. But I think it would be really important at this stage just to consider that we are essentially about people, and being essentially about people, particularly at Chiltern Learning, essentially just about people. The challenges which are going to surround all our schools in the leading and back to the times of being normal are going to put us in very different situations than we have been before. We have no necessarily completely accurate information on what kind of experiences our students, pupils, the children will have had, their families will have had, or indeed those of members of staff. And I think that's a good starting point. There are going to be many of us in those weeks leading up to and back to normality where we are going to be wanting to establish just exactly where individuals are, what experiences they've had. How are we going to coordinate that? How are we going to make sure that we are knowledgeable about the people who we deal with day to day and who we have responsibility for? What kind of systems do you have at the moment within school to actually make sure that that knowledge base is built in a sensitive way so that we have a starting point? Because the landscape will have changed for so many individuals in that time. But beyond the people, obviously there are several other areas that spring to mind in terms of what we can deal with as we move towards normality. The amount of investment in time that has been given to the e-learning platforms and has been given to bringing the children and the students forward with their e-learning, the amount of time that's been given over to that, both from staff and with pupils, means that there has to be a massive amount of positivity of experience moving forward with it. How can we capitalize on what has been really, really successful? At no other point in time have schools and individuals had to engage with this process of education from a distance. And there has to be real recognition on the part of schools that there will have been some excellent practice which doesn't have to be consigned to the history books just because we happen to have found a vaccine for COVID-19. We have to be able to be in a position where we have harvested the best of what there is there, and we have to be able to be prepared to capitalize it and make sure that we can use as much of that good material as is possible. Not only the material, but also the habits surrounding the material. Parental engagement over the last few months has probably been at its highest levels since schools began. I cannot think of another time where parents have had to, for want of a better word, have had to engage with the process of education. And some of them found that really, really challenging, hardly surprisingly. And therefore, that body of parental engagement, how do we then make sure that when things start to happen in the normal course of a school year, how do we not let that trickle away? It's really important, I think, that schools give serious thought to how they maintain that communication, how they actually capitalise on parents who have also gathered many skills around them and pupils who've gathered many skills around them over the last few weeks, and how can we keep developing them so that they see their journey and the school's journey and their children's educational journey all as one of the same. And I think there's some real work to be done there by school leaders. The challenge for leaders at different levels is something which I've always given a lot of thought to, I hope. Let's take head of department. If I was a head still, and I was looking to ensure that momentum was kept up for heads of department. Heads of department and teachers have done some brilliant work. We see the evidence of that day in, day out. It's very phase specific in terms of what they can do with their teams and what they feel they have the ability to do with their teams. But whether or not that is, for instance, on a primary level, it may well be about getting a lot of non-specialists to upgrade their subject knowledge, about sharing that subject knowledge, about putting teachers in the driving seat in these weeks of lockdown where they can actually start to run those sessions for others. One of the constant issues that we have is very much based around not enough meeting time in schools. Surely now is such a good time to be able to bring that sharing of pedagogy, sharing of subject knowledge, and put it together where time is not necessarily of the essence in quite the same way. Putting teachers in the driving seat of driving some of that forward, and heads of department or key stage coordinators at every level being able to make sure that some of those gaps are filled. And while we're on the whole issue of gap filling, I don't think any of us necessarily know the impact that 8, 9, possibly even 10 weeks of education at home is going to, what that's going to mean in terms of the gaps in knowledge that will have been left during that time. We need to be able to say to pupils on their return to school, we need to establish where those gaps really are. And one of the things that I think head of departments can be doing very successfully at the moment is putting themselves in a situation where they are gathering some of that information from their staff. I know for a fact many are, but this is something which is not always, or should not always be left to chance. This is something which senior leaders should be looking at in some detail with their middle leaders and coordinating in a way so that there is a really balanced picture about what those experiences have been like. The priority when children return to school is going to have to be to try and fill those gaps, to try and play catch up with some of the knowledge areas that perhaps have been a bit sketchy, even though the best intended resources have been put in front of children. For some senior leaders, this whole period of lockdown and schools closing will have been very revealing in terms of CPD needs for their staff. Obviously, it's probably had an emphasis on technology and the use of it, and the gaps that there are on the part of teachers. And let's face it, there are many of us out there who have taken a while to get to grips with some of this technology, and some schools do it a lot better than others. So now is the time, I think, to really take stock of just exactly what the learning has looked like from the point of view of the staff and the pupils, and where their skills are now, where perhaps they might not have been 8 to 10 weeks ago. They will have been hugely upskilled, and the CPD needs will have changed significantly. Now is the time for a root and branch review of those CPD needs, and particularly those gaps that still exist around teachers and pupils being able to access their learning in a rather different way. And this is something that I would urge all senior leaders, all school leaders to take up the banner of as we move over the next month and a half. An issue which was put in front of me the other day, which wasn't one that I'd immediately considered on thinking about keeping the momentum going and developing everybody during this difficult time, was when somebody mentioned about how staff specifically actually know how well they're doing. It's something we take for granted, I think, in day-to-day face-to-face contact. We take it for granted that we tread the corridors, we know our staff, we know our pupils, we see them face-to-face. There are so many subliminal messages that school leaders give out, which actually, both at an official and an unofficial level, tell teachers and pupils just how well they think they're doing. Now, this is a real challenge when we start talking about remote learning of whatever sort. Going through 8 weeks or possibly more of a year, not knowing exactly how effective we've been is quite unusual. How do we gather the feel for how effective the learning has been? Obviously, we can do an ultimate number of surveys and all those things that we might traditionally do, but teachers' reflections on the work that they've done will be very varied. And that almost goes without saying, but to work somewhere where, or to work in an environment where actually not knowing quite how well you're doing is quite unnerving, I think, in a lot of cases. And so this is something that I'd urge senior leaders once again to try and get their heads around and try and work out ways in which we're going to be able to reinforce what teachers' own perceptions of themselves and their performance over time has actually looked like. I think as a very reflective process, and one which I think would be very revealing as part of honest conversations, is something which we have a huge amount to learn from. We will have been given pupils various amounts and styles of feedback over the last few weeks, and what kind of feedback has come the way of the teachers and the other staff that have been contributing towards the learning journey that the pupils have been on in that time. Do we take into consideration, of course, that our NQTs, for instance, they will be 8 at least weeks behind in terms of face-to-face experience, our trainees in exactly the same situation, and while the government might have changed some of the parameters around those guidance rules that cover NQTs and trainees, just exactly what is that going to mean in terms of our expectations of them when they either start their first year in the classroom or when they move on to their second year of teaching? Is this something that senior leaders have given due consideration to? One of the areas that I'd also like people to consider is the vast wave of parental engagement which has come as a part of us all being in this lockdown situation. Parental engagement will have risen hugely. How are the schools reacting to that level of parental engagement, and how are they making sure that they don't let it trickle away just because someone's found the vaccine to COVID-19 and we're back to whatever normal may look like? So what does the parental engagement look like for our schools moving forward? Some of the issues that I've mentioned in the last few minutes, I wonder whether those actually do come under your traditional setting of roles within an SLT. I would doubt it, to be honest. And I think there is a case to be made for whether or not the roles within SLT or the immediate priorities of heads of department just need a little bit of a reset. Even if it's a short-term reset for 6 weeks, as the second half of the summer term, hopefully, takes its part. Is that resetting of roles and that resetting of priorities something which are already being considered by heads and by senior teams? I think this is something which we need to get our heads around as soon as possible. Now, I hope that some of those issues are things which I'm sure you'll have many comments to make on, whether you agree with them or not. And I'm sure that in this era of collaboration, I'm sure there are many of you who have real nuggets to contribute to some of those debates and as to whether or not you have some of the solutions for them. So thank you for listening, however short that may be, and my very best wishes. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Julian. There's lots of interesting things for us to think about as school leaders. I'm just taking on to a slightly different tack now for our fourth and final question, really, in what we look for in a good leader. So that when you're doing your plans and when you're having a reflection and a self-evaluation of where your career is at, actually that you can look at what qualities that people are looking for. I would say in my role as CEO and previously for the 14 years as a head and working for Central Bed's local authority, I would say that's the most common question I've been asked. What do we look for in a good leader? I think it's a really interesting question because I think it's probably changed through my leadership journey. I think my answer 20 years ago, when I first became a head, is perhaps very different to my answer now after 5 years as a CEO. I think it's probably best summed up in terms of my attitude changing from actually a PE appointment I made 20 years ago, and we advertised for a rugby specialist, secondary PE teacher, rugby specialist. And we didn't appoint the rugby specialist, we appointed on attitude. And it was a brilliant appointment. We had a super field, 4 shortlisted, really, really good quality candidates. But the one that got the leadership role actually was based on their attitude. And I think that's really important. That actually, it seems a bizarre thing to even advertise now for a rugby specialist in a secondary school. You just appoint the best teacher, the best PE teacher, and that one with the best attitude. So really, I've looked through the qualities and I've looked through the skill set that we look for in our leadership teams within Chiltern Learning Trust or previously perhaps at Central Bed's local authority. And we could almost hold the flashcards up there, but I think key one is always attitude. A point on attitude, a point to someone that will work hard for you, someone that will be positive for you. I think gone are the days actually whereby you could just go on lots of courses, or you could, by the virtue of doing 20 years as deputy headship, get a headship based on your experience. I think people really are looking at your attitude and your approach. I know when we appoint heads in our trust, they have to fit in with our shared vision, and we have to similarly match their aspirations. I think trust is a key word with a small t, really. can you trust this person? Would this person be loyal to you? Would this person be loyal to the school's vision? Also, and when we're looking at interview techniques and coaching, the most common thing I say to people is actually smile. You know, having that quiet assurance and that calmness and that smiling positive approach makes a huge difference. So I know we're not doing interview techniques today, we're looking at your career development, but many of those things, those personal qualities, are really key and really important. Have I looked at the degree classification for a leader in the last 10 years? Probably not. Have I thought how they would fit in with the team? Yes, it's my first and last question every time, and that again is attitude. Some people here, you know, will think that they're perhaps alone and you know they're self-isolating. You should get yourself a career coach. You know, we talked about it in question 2, but find someone that you trust. Have that mirror held up to you. Have that mirror held up as a senior leader within the school, you know, that they can talk to you, so you're not existing in a bubble, that you have that emotional intelligence. And sometimes it's tough to hear those messages about yourself, but I would really strongly recommend that. Get someone to coach you, work with you, look at your weaknesses, not just in terms of curriculum knowledge or pedagogy or finance or HR issues for you to develop, or your middle leadership skills if you're going into middle leadership, but actually look at you as a person. What personal qualities do you need to possess and develop? So on that provocation, and then I'd like to end the session. Just a couple of quick things for you. Thank you ever so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you've got a little bit from it, and I hope more importantly you give some back to us and give us some great ideas. You can now continue to ask the questions on Zoom, and we'll continue to answer. Also, please tweet us over the next hour and a half at Chiltern TSA or at Chiltern LT. We'll answer you. We'll stay online until 11 o'clock. We'll get those questions back to you, and we'll try and help and support as best we can for the next hour and a half, so you've all felt you've been involved. Thank you ever so much. Please have a look on our Eventbrite, look at the other sessions, and we hope they're useful. There are some brilliant speakers coming up later. Thank you.